desert doesn't care about grief. It just burns. Daniel Ashford learned this on the day he buried his son 3 years ago, when the New Mexico sun turned the wooden cross so hot he couldn't touch it without wrapping his hands in cloth. Now, in the spring of 1875, the same sun presses against his back as he guides his wagon north, alone, carrying supplies toward a territory he's never seen. His hands are steady on the reins. His face shows nothing. But inside his chest, there's a hole the size of a 12-year-old boy, and it never closes. He left his farm 2 months after the funeral. The neighbors said it was too soon. His wife's sister said he was running. Maybe they were right, but staying meant walking past the room where his son used to sleep, meant hearing phantom footsteps on the porch, meant waking every morning to a silence so thick it felt like drowning. So he sold everything, packed what little mattered, and pointed his life toward empty land where no one knew his name or the shape of his loss. The boy's name was Jacob. Daniel doesn't say it out loud anymore. Saying it makes it real again, makes the absence sharper. Jacob died on a Tuesday evening in autumn, torn apart by a pack of wild animals near the edge of their property. Daniel found him at dawn. He doesn't let himself remember the details, but they come anyway in dreams, in the flicker of firelight, in the way dust rises from the trail and looks, for one terrible second, like something small and broken. For a long time, Daniel needed someone to hold responsible. The animals were just animals God felt too far away to argue with, so he turned his anger toward the Apache who lived in the scattered hills beyond his old farm. They knew the land. They must have known about the danger. They never warned him. In his mind, their silence became complicity. Their distance became cruelty. He built a story where they were careless, indifferent, maybe even pleased that a settler's child had been lost. It wasn't fair. It wasn't true. But it was easier than accepting that sometimes the world just takes and there's no one to punish for it. Now he rides through country that belongs more to them than to him, though the maps his government prints say otherwise. He's seen their camps from a distance, smoke rising thin and gray against the mountains. He's heard stories from other travelers, some true, some exaggerated, all designed to justify fear. He tells himself he's not afraid. He's just careful. He keeps his rifle clean, he avoids certain trails. He camps in open spaces where he can see what's coming. But on the 4th day north of the last trading post, something shifts inside him. It starts as a headache, dull and persistent, pressing behind his eyes. By midday, his skin feels too tight. By evening, his hands shake when he tries to build a fire. He tells himself it's exhaustion. He's been pushing hard, sleeping little, eating less. He just needs rest. But when he wakes in the night, soaked in sweat, shivering despite the warmth, he knows it's more than that. Fever. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that takes men down fast if they're alone. He tries to keep moving the next morning, but his body refuses. His vision blurs. His legs buckle when he climbs down from the wagon. He manages to lead the horses to a narrow creek, lets them drink, then collapses in the shade of a cottonwood tree. The world tilts. The sky seems too bright, then too dark. He hears his own breathing, ragged and strange, like it belongs to someone else. He doesn't remember closing his eyes. He doesn't remember the hours that pass. What he remembers later is the sound of footsteps, soft and deliberate, and the feeling of hands, not rough, not gentle, just steady, lifting his head, pressing something cool against his lips. Water. He tries to pull away, tries to see who's there, but his body won't cooperate. A voice speaks, low and calm, in a language he doesn't understand. Then darkness again. When he wakes, he's no longer by the creek. He's inside a structure, low and dome-shaped, woven from branches and canvas and hides. Light filters through gaps in the covering, soft and amber. The air smells like smoke and earth, and something medicinal he can't name. His shirt has been removed. His chest is damp, like someone wiped him down with wet cloth. There's a blanket over him, thin and patterned, rough against his skin. Panic rises fast. He tries to sit up, but his head spins and he falls back. A figure moves near the entrance, crouched, stirring something in a clay pot over a small fire. A man, older, maybe 50, with grey streaking through long black hair tied back. His face is weathered, lined deep around the eyes and mouth. He doesn't look at Daniel right away. He just keeps stirring, patient, like he's done this 100 times. Daniel's throat is dry. He tries to speak, but only a croak comes out. The man glances over, nods once, then rises and walks toward him. He kneels beside the blanket, lifts a wooden bowl and holds it out. Steam rises from the surface. Broth. Dark and rich, flecked with bits of meat and herbs. The smell makes Daniel's stomach twist with hunger, but his mind screams at him to refuse, to stay alert, to not accept anything from people he was taught to fear. But he's so thirsty, so weak, and the man just waits, patient, not forcing, not retreating, just holding the bowl like an offering. Daniel takes it. His hands shake. He brings it to his lips and sips. The broth is warm, savory, slightly bitter from the herbs. It steadies him. He drinks more, slowly, and the man nods again, satisfied, then returns to the fire. Over the next hour, Daniel pieces together where he is. This is an Apache camp, temporary, small, maybe just a few families. He can hear voices outside, low and occasional, the sound of children laughing, the scrape of tools against stone. He expects interrogation, demands, suspicion. But no one comes to question him. No one even seems particularly interested. He's just a sick man who needed help, and they gave it. The man who brought the broth returns several times that day, each time with water, or more broth, or a damp cloth to press against Daniel's forehead. His fever spikes and breaks and spikes again. At some point, a woman enters, younger, with careful hands and a face that shows no emotion. She applies a paste to his chest, something cool and sharp-smelling, made from crushed plants. She doesn't speak to him. She just works, efficient, then leaves. Daniel drifts in and out. In his delirium, he sees Jacob's face, hears his son's voice calling from somewhere far away. He wakes crying once, and the man is there, not touching him, not speaking, just sitting nearby, a quiet presence in the dim light. It's strange, uncomfortable, but also somehow steadying. By the third day, the fever begins to lift. Daniel's thoughts clear. He can sit up without the world spinning. He watches the man, whose name he still doesn't know, prepare food, tend the fire, move in and out of the shelter with the ease of someone who's done this his whole life. There's no hurry in him, no waste. Every action has purpose. Daniel tries to speak. His voice is rough, but functional. "Why are you helping me?" The man pauses, looks at him, then shrugs. He doesn't answer, not in words Daniel understands. Instead, he gestures to the bowl, to the fire, to the shelter itself. The message is clear. Because you needed it. That's all. It's not the answer Daniel expected. He was prepared for silence or hostility or some kind of demand. But this simple, unquestioning care unsettles him more than any of those things would have. It doesn't fit the story he's been telling himself. On the fourth day, the woman returns, this time with a younger boy, maybe 14, who watches Daniel with open curiosity. The woman checks his chest, nods, says something to the man. He responds, and though Daniel doesn't understand the words, he recognizes the tone. Approval, relief. He's going to be all right. That afternoon, Daniel is strong enough to step outside. The camp is small, just 4 shelters arranged near a wide clearing. There are perhaps 10 people, maybe fewer. Children play near a pile of smooth stones, stacking them and knocking them down. An older woman weaves something from dried grass, her fingers moving with practiced speed. 2 men sit near a different fire, repairing a tool, speaking in low voices. No one stares at Daniel. No one treats him like a threat or a prisoner. He's just there, another body in the camp, temporary, unremarkable. He walks slowly back to the shelter, his legs still unsteady, and sits near the entrance. The man who's been caring for him approaches, offers him more broth. Daniel takes it, drinks, then looks at him directly. "I'm Daniel," he says, touching his own chest. The man nods. "Kaya," he says, doing the same. It's a small thing, a name, but it shifts something. Daniel has been thinking of these people as a collective, a faceless group, a concept. Now there's Kaya, a man with grey hair and steady hands, and a voice that stays calm even when Daniel was delirious and thrashing. A man who didn't have to help but did anyway. On the 5th day, Daniel feels almost human again. His fever is gone, his strength is returning. He knows he should leave soon, return to his wagon, continue north. But something keeps him there another day, then another. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's the uncomfortable realization that he's been wrong about something important, and leaving too quickly would mean not facing it. He watches the camp. He sees the woman, whose name he learns is Istas, grinding seeds into flour. He sees Kaya teaching the boy, whose name is Nahale, how to wrap cord around the shaft of an arrow. He sees the older woman singing softly while she works, a melody that rises and falls like wind over stone. And then on the 6th day he sees the blanket. It's folded in the corner of the shelter, beneath a woven basket. He notices it because the pattern is familiar. Too familiar. Wide stripes of red and grey and cream, the kind made by traders, common enough that hundreds must exist. But the specific arrangement, the frayed corner, the way the red stripe curves just slightly at the edge, all of it screams at him. Jacob had a blanket like that, exactly like that. His wife bought it from a traveling merchant 2 winters before the boy died. Jacob dragged it everywhere, even in summer, even when it was too warm. He'd wrap himself in it at night, burrow into it like a nest. After Jacob died, Daniel couldn't look at it. His wife packed it away, and when he sold the farm, he didn't ask where it went. Now, here it is. Or something so close it might as well be. Daniel's chest tightens. His hands go cold. He stares at the blanket, and 100 thoughts crash into each other. Did they take it? Was there a trade? Did someone else find it, sell it, pass it along? Or is it just coincidence, just another blanket from the same merchant, the same pattern, the same frayed edge? He doesn't know. And not knowing is worse than any answer. Kaya enters the shelter, sees Daniel staring, follows his gaze to the blanket. For a moment, neither of them moves. Then Kaya walks over, picks it up, unfolds it slowly. He runs his fingers along the edge, his face unreadable. Then he looks at Daniel, and something passes between them, something heavy and unspoken. Kaya says something in his own language, soft and low. Daniel doesn't understand the words, but he hears the tone. Sadness. Old sadness. The kind that doesn't fade. Then Kaya does something Daniel doesn't expect. He gestures to himself, then to the blanket, then makes a cradling motion with his arms. A child. Kaya had a child, and the blanket was theirs. Daniel's breath catches. He wants to ask how, when, what happened, but he already knows the shape of it. Loss. The same shape he carries, maybe different details, different circumstances, but the same gaping absence. Kaya folds the blanket again, carefully, and places it back where it was. He doesn't explain further. He doesn't need to. The message is clear. You're not the only one who's lost something that can't be replaced. Daniel sits there, frozen, as the realization settles over him like cold water. He's been carrying his anger for 3 years, aimed at people he didn't know based on assumptions that felt true, because they gave his pain a target. And now he's sitting in a shelter, cared for by a man who lost a child too, wrapped in the same kind of grief, the same kind of silence. He doesn't know what to do with this. Apologizing feels hollow. Explaining feels pointless. So he just sits, and Kaya sits beside him, and they share the space without words. 2 men who've both held small bodies that went too still, too soon. That night, Daniel barely sleeps. He lies under the thin blanket they gave him, not the one with the stripes, and stares at the shadows on the ceiling. He thinks about Jacob. He thinks about Kaya's child, whose name he'll never know. He thinks about how easy it is to build walls out of grief, to turn pain into blame, to convince yourself that someone else's indifference caused your suffering. But no one here has been indifferent. They've been careful, kind. They've fed him, cooled his fever, asked for nothing in return, and they did it while carrying their own losses, their own reasons to be angry, their own justifications for turning him away. By the 7th morning, Daniel knows he has to leave. His strength is back. His wagon is still by the creek, hopefully untouched. He has a long road ahead, and staying longer would just be delay. He finds Kaya near the fire, preparing food for the day. Daniel approaches slowly, unsure how to begin. He doesn't have the words for what he feels, doesn't know how to bridge the gap between what he believed and what he now knows. So he does the only thing that feels honest. He reaches to his belt, unclips the hunting knife he's carried for 15 years, the one his father gave him, the one with the worn leather handle and the blade he's sharpened 1,000 times. He holds it out to Kaya, not as payment, not as trade, but as the only meaningful thing he has to offer. Kaya looks at the knife, then at Daniel. He doesn't take it right away. He studies Daniel's face, searching for something, maybe sincerity, maybe understanding. Then he reaches out, accepts the knife, turns it over in his hands. He nods once, a gesture of acknowledgement, not gratitude. It's enough. Daniel gathers his few things. Istas appears with a small bundle, dried meat and ground seeds wrapped in cloth. She hands it to him without ceremony. Nahale watches from a distance, silent. The older woman continues weaving, barely glancing up. Kaya walks with Daniel back to the creek, where the wagon sits undisturbed, the horses grazing nearby. They stand there for a moment, two men with no common language except the one carved by loss. Daniel wants to say something, wants to apologize for the years he spent hating people he never met, for the assumptions that let him sleep at night. But the words feel inadequate, too small for the size of the thing between them. Instead, he just nods. Kaya nods back. Then Daniel climbs onto the wagon, takes the reins and moves north toward the territory he was always heading for. But not the same man who started the journey. The desert doesn't care about grief. It doesn't care about guilt either. It just stretches out, wide and indifferent, mile after mile of rock and dust and sky. But somewhere in Daniel's chest, the hole that's been there since Jacob died shifts, just slightly. It doesn't close. It probably never will. But it changes shape, makes room for something else, something harder to name. He doesn't forgive himself, he's not sure he's earned that. But he understands now that anger and grief can look the same for a long time, until someone shows you they're not, until someone offers you broth when you expected nothing, until you see your own pain reflected in the eyes of the person you convinced yourself was incapable of feeling it. 3 weeks later, Daniel reaches the new territory. He builds a small cabin on flat land near a stream. He plants seeds. He works the soil. He doesn't talk much to the other settlers who arrive over the following months. When they share stories about the people who lived here first, stories full of fear and suspicion, he stays quiet. He doesn't correct them. He doesn't argue. He just remembers a man named Kaya and a woman named Istas, and a blanket that might have been his son's or might have been someone else's, but either way, carried the weight of a child who wasn't coming back. And on cold nights, when the wind rattles the cabin walls and the silence feels too heavy, Daniel thinks about the bowl of broth, the damp cloth on his forehead, the steady presence of someone who had every reason to let him suffer, but chose otherwise. He thinks about the knife he gave away, the only valuable thing he owned, now in the hands of a man he'll probably never see again. He doesn't know if it was enough. He doesn't know if anything could be, but it was real. And in the end, that's all he has to offer. Some meetings shift what we believe about those we've never known. Some kindnesses arrive from hands we've been taught to fear. And some grief, no matter how personal it feels, is just the human condition, shared across every border we've invented, waiting for the moment we're too weak to hold on to our certainties and too desperate to refuse a bowl of something warm. If stories like this, quiet and real and carried in the spaces between what's said, matter to you, consider staying. Because the most important memories are often the ones we almost lost, saved only by those who chose care over convenience, humanity over habit.